Hi, I'm James Lamont, Director of the Vidine Center for Rural Economic Development at the University of Minnesota Crookston. Welcome to our supply chain series. Today we're going to talk about environmental, social, and corporate governance, also known as ESG. ESG is something that primarily has impacted the energy sector over the last decade or so, and it's rapidly accelerated into something much bigger. ESG also has roughly $52 trillion worth of private equity on the sidelines today that invest in companies and or processes that meet standards associated with environmental compliance, social justice, and or transparent corporate governance. So when a company looks at whether or not to invest in a farm or a production facility, what they'll do is they'll probably take a hard look at all of the inputs, the production, the efficiencies associated with the production, the environmental impact associated with the production, and then naturally all of the S and the G components, which we're going to talk about here very shortly, to make a determination as to whether or not to avail private capital for your respective operation. As you're aware, farming is a very capital intensive process. Therefore, ESG is rapidly becoming important for those that require private equity. So, how will ESG impact agriculture? Well, first and foremost, you got to be able to sell your product and access capital. So, not only is there an ESG component on the private equity side, but there are simultaneous consumer demands, which are evolving as well, which effectively mirror that of ES and G. This could impact profitability. If you're not meeting certain standards for your clients, naturally, you're going to have a harder time selling your product. But at the same time, if you're having a hard time accessing private capital to infuse into your respective operation, your interest rates are going to go higher, and then it begins to spiral from there. Simultaneous to this, you need to be cognizant of the fact that there is a scoring mechanism that'll focus on your soil, the types of inputs that impact the environment, for example, pesticides, types of waste you engage in, how much water you're using, the types of climate smart agricultural tools you're using. So if you're using more modernized farming equipment, you're going to score higher naturally because your emissions are going to be lower, et cetera. So given that there's $52 trillion assets under management right now to meet the standard, it's important for you to take a hard look at this. Simultaneous to that, companies like PepsiCo, Cargill, ADM, you name it, they all have their own ESG standards to determine whether or not they want to purchase your product to go into their respective finished products. So as a result, if you do not meet these ESG standards, you can see some level of divestment that will occur should you not meet the requirement. We're seeing that in the energy sector today. It's most pronounced in industries such as coal, but it is starting to grow into the petroleum sector, natural gas sector, et cetera. But if you were to kind of do some research on ESG in agriculture, it's rapidly moving there as well, as there are already several industries in the upper Midwest that are impacted by ESG investments, either at the producer level or within the respective private equity market that you're attempting to access capital from. So, preparing for ESG. Well, there's an up and downstream supply chain impact naturally. They want to know where you're getting your stuff, whether or not clean processes and or socially and or corporate governance standards are being met from those that you purchase from. Same thing downstream your respective supply chain, or upstream rather. It doesn't matter who you're buying from or who you're selling to. They're analyzing this requirement end to end to determine whether or not you meet the standard. They're also looking at antiquated logistics models and transportation networks because they think they're energy intensive. So as a result, when an ESG compliant private equity firm takes an examination at your books when you're trying to access capital, you're going to need to prove to them that you're making the requisite steps to score higher either in the environmental space, the social space, or the corporate governance space. So how do you prepare your company? Understand the 140 so metrics that are going into the requisite scoring criteria. See where you can make an impact. Chances are there's some low-hanging fruit within your respective operation. Do this via, traditional sort of identification, planning, assessment, and analysis process. And then from there, you can go and tackle some of the more difficult attributes to ensure that if you aren't meeting those standards, you prepare your company for ESG compliant investment standards. Thank you for joining us today. This is a very complex topic, but I would encourage you to reach out to us if you have any additional questions, and we'd be happy to work through them with you. Thank you.